Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now, on Friday night, there is a game between an American Conference team and an independent school, with the ECU Pirates traveling on the road at the BYU Cougars. Who do I think is going to win this game? Let's break it down. Now, East Carolina is 5-3 to start this season, and Mike Houston's done a fantastic job with the Pirates, turning them around from the Scotty Montgomery era where they were really struggling. And this season, they've been pretty decent as well. They've been up and down, but they've had a pretty good season. They started with a Week 1 loss to NC State 21-20. That was a tough loss because they definitely could have won if they had just hit a field goal. Then they bounced back and beat Old Dominion 39-21, which is a good win because Old Dominion's beaten Virginia Tech and Coastal Carolina this season. And then ECU beat Campbell 49-10. That was a good win. But then they lost to Navy 23-20 in overtime, and this was their worst loss of the season. ECU probably should have won this game, but they could not get it done. And then they won at South Florida 48-28. That was a good win. And then they lost at Tulane 24-9. They struggled in this game. ECU did, but Tulane is a really good team this year. But then they bounced back, and East Carolina beat Memphis in overtime 47-45 in a thriller game that went into 4 overtimes. It was a fantastic game. And then they beat UCF 34-13 in a game that a lot of people, including myself, thought would be a closer game. Maybe even UCF could win because UCF's a really good team. But ECU put their foot on the gas and they blew out UCF. And that was probably their best game of the season. And quarterback Holt Naylor's in that UCF game at 311 yards and a touchdown and 6 rushing yards and a touchdown. He's a dual threat quarterback, a very big quarterback. He's very solid, and he's definitely going to have a chance to maybe play in the NFL because he is really talented. Running back Keaton Mitchell at 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's a good sign for ECU that they got the running game going against UCF. They have struggled at times this season to run the football, but they did really good in this game. Wide receiver C.J. Johnson at 140 yards and a touchdown. If you give this guy space, it's over. C.J. Johnson is fantastic. He is a speedster, and he could definitely be in the NFL. Wide receiver Isaiah Winstead at 89 yards. He's a solid receiver. Now on the defensive side of the ball, linebacker Jeremy Lewis at 4 tackles, cornerback Malik Fleming at 3 tackles and interception, and safety Julius Wood at 4 tackles for ECU against UCF. And ECU's defense has been pretty decent this season. They've played good at times. Sometimes they've given up a lot of points, but they are a much improved defensive unit than they've been in the past. Now on the BYU side, they are 4-4 to start this season. And Kalani Sitake is a really great coach, and he's done a great job at BYU to have them as one of the top independent programs in the country, but they are struggling this season. They started out pretty decent this season, but they've kind of fallen short of expectations, what people thought they were going to be this season. They won at South Florida in Week 1 50-21, and that was a good win. You go on the road like that at South Florida and win by that much. And then they beat Baylor in overtime 26-20, and this was a good win because 2 of their top receivers for BYU were out in this game, and Baylor is a really solid team, and they got the win. But then they lost at Oregon 41-20, and obviously Oregon's a really good team this season, but they were not competitive in this game. Then they beat Wyoming and Utah State 38-24 and 38-26 respectively, and those were both decent wins, but they didn't really blow either team out, and both teams are struggling this season, so that kind of was a little bit alarming for BYU fans. But then they lost to Notre Dame on a neutral site in Las Vegas 28-20. Notre Dame is not having one of their better seasons this year, and BYU could not get the win, and that was a tough loss. And then they lost to Arkansas 52-35. Same thing, Arkansas is not having one of Sam Pittman's better seasons as head coach at Arkansas, and BYU was not super competitive in this game either, and they gave up a lot of points. And then they lost at Liberty 41-14, and this was a game that probably people thought coming into the season BYU would win, because on paper they're the better team over Liberty, but they got destroyed in this game, and they played horrible, and they're giving up a lot of points. And in that game, quarterback Jaron Hall had 187 yards and 2 touchdowns and 24 rushing yards. He's a solid quarterback, but he did better for BYU last year, and obviously he's not Zach Wilson, who BYU had 2 years ago, who's now in the NFL. Jaron Hall is going to have to start playing at a much better level if BYU is going to get back to where they want to be. Wide receiver Puka Nacua had 114 yards and a touchdown and 14 rushing yards. He's a really good receiver, but BYU's passing game has not been as good as this season as it was last year, but Puka Nacua is their best receiver, besides Gunnar Romney, who has been in and out of the lineup because of injury, and he has not been getting a lot of targets this season. Tight end Isaac Rex at 38 yards and a touchdown. He's a good tight end for BYU. Running back Christopher Brooks at 26 yards. BYU needs to run the ball more. Their running game is not doing good at all. Their passing game is doing decent, but their run game needs a lot more yards on the ground to help Jaron Hall out. And on the defensive side of the ball, linebacker Max Tooley had 5 tackles. He's a really great linebacker, and he'll probably be in the NFL. Linebacker Keenan Pilley had 5 tackles, and defensive lineman Tyler Batty had 4 tackles for BYU against Liberty. And BYU's defense in past years has been a lot better than it has this year. They have a lot of talented players, most notably Max Tooley, but they are not playing as well on the defensive side of the ball this season. So who do I think is going to win this game? Coming into the season, if you had told me about this game, I probably would have said BYU was going to beat East Carolina, because obviously East Carolina is a good football team, and they have been improving under Mike Houston. They even made a bowl game last year, but obviously got canceled. But Brigham Young has not been playing as good of football this season. They've been struggling, and BYU coming into the season had a lot higher expectations than what they are right now at 4-4. Their offense is not as good as it was last year, and their defense is giving up way too many points, as evident by the Arkansas and Liberty games. ECU's been playing good football. They have won 2 in a row over Memphis and UCF in pretty good fashion, especially the UCF win. I'm going to go with ECU to beat BYU 35-24. This game is at BYU, and I think BYU can win because it's at home and they have a great home crowd. But Kalani Sitake's team is just not playing as well on offense and defense, and I think ECU with Holt Nailors and Mike Houston, the head coach, they are playing much better football than BYU right now, and I'm going to have ECU going on the road and winning at BYU 35-24. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below whether you think ECU or BYU is going to win this game and why, and I will see you next time.